Welcome to another episode of Boom or Bust, your home for NFL Draft Talk. I'm your host, Terry, and today we're looking at the 2019 wide receivers. Then we're going to wrap this all up with the real grade for the Detroit Lions. Go to the comment section, look for the link if you want to click that to get more detailed notes from the different players that I looked at. And I'm just going to touch on the top three guys or ish, and then probably talk about a few guys I like as well. So, overall, wide receivers has become a position that's, I wouldn't say devalued, but much like the running back, they have become a dime a dozen. And I've talked about this pretty much every year that I've done the draft. Well, not every year, but in the last few years. The reason that is because the position has become so versatile, and it used to be a time where there was a prototypical receiver built for the West Coast offense, a prototypical height, weight, everything, how high up your hips were, to your leg ratio, all these different things. The 40, they had exact measurements of what it should be to be well-built receiver. And then we've gotten into the age where you have the big body red zone targets, the back shoulder, fade 50-50 type targets. Of course, the shorter slot targets, the speed guys like Antonio Brown who do yak as well. All these different receivers kind of open up the floodgates for receivers to come in all shapes and sizes, literally. And so what that has done has made it possible for you to get good receivers anywhere throughout the draft. And we've always had, of course, players that just end up being better than people expected. But I think having such a variety of receivers that it makes the class a lot deeper, because before it was just like, okay, cut this many people off at the class because they're never going to make it as receivers. But now they're all have opportunities depending on the system. So that's kind of where we are, receivers, where it's not as valued as much. I mean, I still think it's a big position, but in the draft game, I just don't think you have to reach hard for a receiver unless they have some freakish generational athleticism, of course. But other than that, I think you wait in the draft to find the guy that fits your system the best, and that could come down the line. Now, the other thing with the receivers is that they're not producing good talent anymore. So much like the conversation with quarterbacks, offensive tackles, same thing with receivers. And hint, you see a pattern. It's all on offense. And there's a reason for that. That's the spread offense. So, it's become difficult. I've used the same traits for most of the time I've done draft. And one of the traits that I look at for receivers is ball skills. And that encompasses a number of things: the ability to explode up and go get the ball, your timing and accuracy on when to go up and get the ball, how you track the ball over your shoulder on deep passes, all these different things. And I would say in the last 3 years, it almost like pretty much doesn't need to be on my evaluation list because you never see it. And you'll see it in the NFL. It's definitely still a skill you need. But in college, you rarely see it. And receivers are tough because if you don't get in running backs, if you don't get a play that out of all the tape you watch that shows them in a straight line speed or in a straight jump ball situation, it's hard to know what they can do until you see the combine numbers. And so when you do see it, though, it's so rare because most of these guys are playing these spread offenses where they don't run a lot of routes. They run vertical, they run a stick route, or they run a slant, or they run some type of screen. And that pretty much is receivers with these short route trees, and they lose so much of the nuance and skill of what it is to be a receiver. There's so few of these guys that can actually separate. And not separate just by running fast or just pushing with somebody and pushing off and jumping up to get the ball, but actually separate with their route running, where they know how to stem off a route, set it up inside, break outside, double move, all these different things, where they actually know how to get off the line of scrimmage on their release, whether that's a stutter, sidestep, using their hands to defeat press. All that is kind of out the window for a lot of teams. And so as a result, a lot of these receivers are so unpolished when they're coming out, and we've seen a steady decline in the product that college is putting out with receivers. Now, I think it's encouraging that a lot of these guys from this era, not a lot, but there's still stars coming out of this era, I would say. And so it's not like none of these guys in the last few years have become stars. They're still becoming stars. So that's good. And it shows that it can be corrected in the NFL. But more times than not, you got to have great talent to get corrected in the NFL and become a star. A lot of times, if you don't have that polish, then you just kind of fall to the wayside in the NFL. So, anyway, let's go into this, class, which I'm going to say up front, not a fan of. Not a fan of this class at all. Much like I was talking about the running backs. You thought I didn't like the running backs. I really don't like the receiver class, because not only is the depth not there, as I talked about, a lot of receivers aren't that good, but there's no top tier talent. There's no one at the top that you're like, yes, they're so much better than everybody. And, starting with the Ole Miss guys, I would venture to think DK Metcalf is supposed to be that guy, but he didn't have much tape because he was injured a lot. So I didn't get to watch him and fully evaluate. I seen a little bit on other tapes and a little bit of highlights, so I could get an idea of what he's supposed to be. I mean, he's, supposedly 6'4", 230. That's huge size. So he's supposed to be kind of one of those guys that can go up and get it, but he also moves pretty well from what I saw. So we'll see what he's like after the injury. But, you got to start with AJ Brown, his partner at Ole Miss. That man's built like a linebacker. He's 6'1", 225, super rocked up, well put together. But, my issue with him is that he's slow. Like, I think he might have long speed, but it's a situation where he's got to get ahead of steam. And so when you got guys that are long-legged and striders and they don't accelerate fast, they have to get that head of steam before they start getting the top speed. And the issue with that is if you play receiver, you need instant speed a lot of times. And so when you got a guy playing man coverage on him, he's not really going nowhere. He's not, I mean, you could throw it up and he could make a contested catch, but he's not going to get separation. And when DK Metcalf was playing, AJ Brown was in the slot a lot. And I've noticed that's when he's the best. He's basically like a glorified tight end. And so when you do the slants and kind of the zone killers from the slot, he can be real good at that. But when you had to put him on the outside to win one-on-one, it didn't look that good to me. Now, when he gets the ball, he's a big dude. You know, he could be a yak receiver. He could definitely get you yards after the catch. He runs hard to tackle. I like that yak ability. That's going to be his calling card. The question is, what's going to happen when people sit on his routes and how you going to get him the ball? That's the thing that kind of scares me. So, I mean, he's got big hands that are strong, that are decent. Route running is just so. And it's hard to be a good route runner when you don't have speed. So, I don't know, man. For him to be talked about as one of the top prospects, I mean, I could see he moves pretty well as far as agility, but for his size, but he's not super fast. So, I don't know, man. That's going to scare me. He's a great blocker too. So he's got tools. He's going to have to be a big slot, if you're going to make him effective though, unless, you know, you can really work on his speed. All right. So outside of, the two Ole Miss guys, you got, Marquise Brown, who they call Hollywood out of Oklahoma, 5'11", 160. He is Antonio Brown's cousin, so that tells you something. So he's a speed receiver, deep threat, explosive yak guy. We've seen guys like this before. He's not super short, but around 5'11", 6 foot, so pretty good height. But he's a really thin guy, thin frame, and got a lot of speed. So, you think about, I keep forgetting his name. Ross from, Washington came out a few years ago. I can't remember his first name for whatever reason. Where he kind of blew up the combine and everybody kind of gave him praise. Now I think he was a little more thicker, more built than Brown is, but similar style where you got a lot of guys playing off of you because of all the speed. So you don't really face press a whole lot. And then you're able to set up that deep speed threat and use that to run a variety of routes to get you open. But he's so sudden and quick that the way he runs his routes, he could definitely get people on skates. And especially when they start getting greedy and want to jump things, and he could double move them. So, I think he's pretty good that way. But then he's also good where you give him the ball, whether it's a jet sweep, whether it's a screen, whether it's out the backfield, just kind of one of those playmakers that you want to get the ball in his hands and let him use his athleticism to make plays. So we'll see how fast he's going to be. Again, it's hard with a lot of these skill positions into the combine. But I think he's going to be up there, around the low 4.4s, 4.3s. I think I gave him a level 5 agility. I think he's got a lot of agility to burn. And even with ball skills, I think again, 5'11" is not short. So he's shown ability to go up and track the ball and flash the ability to go up and, get it. And so even though he's, more thin, he's made some of those catches in traffic. But again, I worry about how all that translates to the next level where he's not going to be able to get away with, out-muscling anybody. So that's going to be cause for concern. And I think his hands are fine. I worry about his catching traffic. So there's that. And then, by the way, for the gradable traits, I do speed, agility, ball skills, route running, and hands for receivers. So that's Marquise Brown. And then from there, it's kind of hard to say who people consider in the top 3, but I'm gonna go with Deebo Samuel just because I see his name a lot. Out of North Carolina, 6'2", 208. He is interesting. I mean, I think he's pretty slow too. I think he's a build-up speed guy. I wouldn't say slow. I gave him a 3.5, so I could see him running in the 4.5s, but he's definitely a guy that does not accelerate fast. So on the surface, he looks real slow, but he's kind of built like a running back. And when he gets the ball, he kind of runs like a running back, has pretty good vision, doesn't like to go down, likes to make as much yards as possible. So he's definitely a yak receiver in the sense that you're going to want to do short game with him and get, the ball in his hand so that he can catch and run. And, I liked when he blocked. I think when he definitely gave effort, he was a really good blocker. So I definitely always appreciate, when receivers are good blockers. And I will say receivers, for the most part, have become better blockers in this class that I've seen. And that's a result of spread offenses where you have to do so many bubbles and screens. But, when he blocks, definitely an asset. Physical against the press and all that good stuff. But I just think his route running needs a lot of work. His hands and ball skills, they're pretty good. I like the tools, but his route running needs a lot of work because he does not have a lot of speed. And so without that threat of the deep ball, it's hard to, especially in the NFL, it's hard to get corners to not sit on you. And when they sit on you, unless you got something else that you could bring to table, you're not going to be able to get free. And so, like I said, he's one of those guys that doesn't really work his release too well and doesn't use his hands too well off the line. And so those are things that he's going to have to get way better at if he wants to be able to get off the line of scrimmage in the NFL. All right. So as far as some guys that I like personally, I like arcega-whiteside out of Stanford. They list him at 6'3". He looks so much bigger than that, but I think he's a great prospect. I'm not seeing a lot of love for him, but I think he is a great prospect because at 6'3", 225, you're in that big receiver category where you're kind of a 50-50 winner, and he definitely is that. But he's got so much polish, and that's what happens a lot of times when you get players from pro-style offenses. So Stanford is notoriously a smash-mouth pro-style offense, and so you get trained up in pro-style ways. So the things I was just talking about with Samuel, you see it with Whiteside, where he's working his release really well, where he works to set up his routes and stem off his routes so he can make bigger plays, sinking his hips. And so all those things you see with him, plus you add on the fact that he has the large ball skill game, which you do see in his tapes. You do see him making those contested catches, those red zone catches, using the great catch radius, using his ability to high point. You got all of that. And then his route tree is pretty solid. Again, pro style offense, you see him run the NFL routes that he's going to have to run. And it's not just him lining up in the slot, being a glorified tight end. It's not him just doing it against zone. It's him actually on the outside, on the island, making plays. And I think he's faster than we think. And I think ultimately his top speed might be similar to a lot of these guys, but I think his acceleration is really fast. So that's one thing you really got to tell the difference with a receiver is their top speed and their acceleration, especially with Striders. Because Striders, like I said, it takes time for them to build up. Some guys accelerate and are fast right now. Now their top speed might be the same, but they accelerate really quickly. And I think for a guy that's 6'3", almost 230, he accelerates really fast. And I think it catches some D-backs off guard. So when you're talking about him giving you a stutter to the outside and then working the inside move for a route, if you don't pay attention, it's not one that you're going to be able to catch real quick. He's going to be gone. And so that he makes a very intriguing prospect, I think. I think his agility is suspect. He's more of a stiff hip, straight line type guy. And so maybe won't be the best as a yak, receiver, but he's hard to bring down because he's a big dude, but I don't think he's going to give you a lot of yards after the catch, but I think he can make some plays downfield and he's definitely going to be able to make 50-50 catches. So that's one that I'm really, intrigued about. Another receiver that kind of intrigues me is Emmanuel Hall out of Mizzou. Now, from what I've seen, and again, this year I'm not able to get as in depth as I usually do, because I usually kind of know these things. But from what I've kind of seen and heard, he has some off the field character issues, not exactly legal trouble, just his ability as a football player and a teammate. And you could tell, I mean, it might be the coach thing of me to say, but I could always tell that when a receiver does not care to block, there's some diva stuff going on there. And so he's one of the few guys that isn't a good blocker. Like I was mentioning, I've seen this class, their blocking ability overall is a lot better than years past. But with Hall, it looks like it used to. It's just like, let me love tap you and then I'm going to just stop. That's not my job. I'm not getting the ball. And so kind of the word is he isn't that invested as a teammate when he's not getting the ball. He doesn't always give a lot of effort or play through injury and all that. So we'll see kind of what that ends up. But 6'1", 196, prototypical receiver size, and he's got a lot of speed. If he runs in the 4.3s at the combine, and I'm not sure he's a 4.3 guy, but if he runs there, then we're going to be having a whole different conversation. This guy reminds me a little bit of Robert Woods. And I say a little bit because Robert Woods was I still consider probably the best route runner I've seen come out of college. So he's definitely not on that level, but his routes are really good. And it's because he's got the speed that he's able to set them up. But he's got a lot of athleticism, a lot of speed, a lot of quick twitch agility. And so his route set him up pretty well. And he's got good yak ability. He's a good runner after the catch as well. So, I think he's got some really exciting tools. I guess if the, character really is concerned, then it's going to be a matter of getting him in the right, locker room. But I think he can definitely be one of the best receivers out of this group. All right. So, that's it. I mean, it's a number. Receivers is a big position group. So, I'm definitely going to add more. For the sake of time, I didn't cover everybody, this round. I'm going to add more in the next round. And then, you definitely could go to the link to see if you want to see some of the other guys I covered. But overall, I would just say I wasn't overly impressed with any of these guys. So I think it's a bad receiver class, to be honest with you. I think all these guys have serious holes in their game, and I'll be interested to see if anyone gets pushed up this year or if they'll just let receivers slide to the second round. And if they do that, that'll be a sign of what the league is starting to feel about this position. All right, time for the real grade. Let's go to the Detroit Lions. 3 years ago, 2016. Number 1, we got Taylor Decker out of Ohio State, still starting for the team at left tackle now. Second round, we got A'Shawn Robinson, still starting for the team. Third round, Graham Glasgow, still starting for the team, started most of all the games since he's been there. Fourth round, we got Miles Killebrew, who is still on the team, not a starter, but on the team. Joe Dahl, also on the team, not a starter. We got Antoine Williams, who I believe is out of the league now, practice squad type player. You got Jake Ruddick, who I think is on their practice squad. Maybe I know he's been in the past, but he's not on the active roster. You got Anthony Zettel, who had a big year and now is with the Cleveland Browns, where he kind of starts off and on. And you got the long snapper, Jimmy Landis, no longer in the league, didn't even make it that year. And then you got Dwayne Washington, who is now with the New Orleans Saints, who, of course, he's not starting there, but he's on the team. All right, so you look at this, we got 10 players. Out of the 10 players, 7 are still in the league. Out of the 7 that are still in the league, 5 are still on your team. Out of the 5 that are on your team, 3 are starters. And out of your starters, I say you got, I don't know if I call any of them a star. Definitely not A'Shawn. Graham Glasgow's really solid. Taylor Decker, he's solid. I wouldn't call him a star. So, but you got 3 starters, so I'll give you that. And then out of the 3 that are out of the league, you got one's the 5th round pick, one's the 6th round pick, and one's the 6th round pick long snapper. So you didn't really lose any scratch there. You hit with your first 4 picks. That's good. Zettel would be different if he kept up, if he kept up the level of play he was at. But he had a flash year for Detroit, was able to go to Cleveland, and then didn't really seem the same. So, interesting though. I mean, with a 6th round pick that has a year like that, that's big for you. So, you know what? I had a grade in mind, but I'm going to change it. I'm going to give this a B+. 10 picks. That's a good hit rate. It's not easy to keep 7 people. Especially it's not easy to hit on your first 3 picks. So I give this a B+. Yeah. So go to the comment section. Tell me what you think about Detroit Lions, 2016 draft class. What grade would you give it? Tell me what you think about this receiver class. Anybody in particular you excited about? Do you think the class is better than I think it is? Go to the comment section. Let me know. Start the conversation. Share it around. Thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for listening.